I'd like to welcome you today to another series that I will be discussing today related to the Quran. Is the Quran preserved, or has the Quran been tampered with, changed, or corrupted? You see, as a Muslim, and as you can see, someone who grew up in Saudi Arabia, born there, raised there, come from there, I believed with all my heart, like any other Muslim you're going to meet, that the Quran is the only preserved heavenly book. That God did reveal other books before it, like the Torah, basically the Psalms, like the Injil, or maybe the Old Testament, New Testament, however you want to classify it. The Quran does make mention of these books, but the idea that is Muslim theologians believe, and specifically in the 10th, 11th century by someone, his name is Ibn Hazm or Ibn Hazm, he decided that any parts of the Bible that do not match the Quran, in other words, contradicting the teaching found in the Quran, let's use the Trinity as an example, for instance, then in his mind, he basically reached this conclusion that the parts in the Bible that contradicted the Quran are basically corrupt. Believe it or not, this basically, this hypothesis, this formula that he created stuck for the last 1,000 years. Because we do not find any evidence in the Quran itself or the Islamic sources like the Hadith and the Quran and even the Sirah that says anything about the Bible as a whole basically being a corrupted book. In fact, the Quran even goes an extra mile by quoting from the Bible, and even in chapter 5 of the Quran, towards the end of the life of the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, he even praised the fact that the Bible is good to be used by the Jewish people and the Christian people for judgment. So all of these things, of course, makes us raise this question. Is the Quran also a book that has been preserved as it claims? I'm going to show you a couple of examples today, very simple examples that you can even find on the net that others have really invested the time to do, and you can find it freely, whether in article form or you can even find it in books and so on and so forth. The idea is I'm going to prove to you that the Quran actually, as we have it today, is not the same Quran that existed in centuries past. That the readings, for instance, is not exactly preserved or is not the same. So, for instance, we are going to look at the different types of readings. You've heard probably that the Quran has different types of reading, and specifically the 7 readings, meaning that one verse could be read in 7 different ways, or specifically certain words in that verse. Now, the puzzling thing about that is this. Now, how was the Quran preserved in heaven? The Quran says it was preserved in the preserved tablets in heaven, in the 7th heaven, near the throne of God. Which reading was it preserved in? Which reading was it revealed in? Which reading did Uthman decide to keep, and why did he burn the other readings? Who gave him the authority, as he wasn't the prophet, to make such a decision? And in the 4th century of Islam, which is around the 10th, 11th century, AD, there was a return by the Islamic Caliphate back to these different readings. And basically, every reading out of these 7 has 2 narrators. The idea is to preserve that reading and the accuracy of that way of stating things. 2 of those most common narrators who preserved readings are what we call Warsh and Hafs. Hafs is found almost all over, basically, the Muslim world. Warsh is found specifically in North Africa, in areas like Morocco, for instance. And I want to add one more thing. The Quran that we have in our hand today is actually based on the Cairo Quran in 1924. So it's not even close to what was written or done before. Another fact that I'm going to share with you, maybe you know, that if you look at the early Quranic manuscripts, and the earliest basically that is in hand is around 8th century, none of those actually have any vowel markings, dottings, diacritical markings, and even the way the graphical writing of the letters, if you compare them, were different. The lack of these markings in a Semitic language like the Arabic is very crucial, because the way you put a dot on a specific letter can make a big difference in the way you pronounce it and the meaning of that particular word. So let's take a quick journey here to take a look at some of those examples. But before that, I want to just list to you all of those 7 different readings for your own reference. As you can see on the screen, the first one is Nafi' from Medina. The second one, Ibn Kathir. The next one is Abu Amr. The next one is Abu Amir. Then Hamza. Then Al-Kisa'i. And finally, Abu Bakr. Now, let's take a quick look at some differences between the 2 most common ones, Hafs and Warsh, when it comes to the graphical and the basic letter differences. Take a look here. Warsh in chapter 2 of the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah, basically, the cow, that's the chapter of the cow or the chapter of the heifer. Chapter 2, he numbered it verse 131. Hafs numbered the same thing, verse 132. Right there we see a difference even in verse numbering. But look also at the major difference between the 2. Here is what Warsh basically is showing. Warsh is showing an extra letter. The way we read it, wa'awsa. And it's saying that basically Ibrahim, which is Abraham, instructed basically his son. In this reading, basically, there is more intensification of this verb. Yet in Hafs' reading, we do not find this letter. It's missing. You see, the alif is missing. It's not there. And it read wawassa. Even if you don't know Arabic, you're going to notice the difference. One is wa'awsa, the other one is wawassa. So right there, my question is, which way was this read at the time of the Prophet? Which way was it revealed at the time of the Prophet? Which way was it preserved in the heaven? Then we look at another passage from chapter 3 of the Quran, verse 133. And Warsh reads it, Sari'u, meaning hasten to. And Hafs reads it, and hasten to. So notice there is a wow, and is missing in the reading of Warsh. It is not there. This wow is missing. If the Quran is really preserved, then where did this wow come from? Who has the right to add it? Now, I have a theory, by the way. This could have been an F word, basically, fa, basically, fasari'u. And it's possible that it was missing from here too. Sometimes they can join these letters and all of a sudden you have a different reading. And there has been some examples where the letter fa or the letter kaf was conjoined accidentally and the people thought maybe it was a waw. Or in this case, it could have been a fa or a kaf. And in this case, fa will make sense. But it was removed basically and disjoined, and now it is looking like a waw. Now let's look at another example. Diacritical differences and markings and dottings. Here we see, like in chapter 2, verse 57 according to Warsh, the same thing is actually number 58 according to Hafs. And the way Warsh is reading it is yughfar aw yaghfir. He gives mercy or gives forgiveness. God. All right? We give mercy. God. But one in the singular, one in the plural. So which way do you read it? Yughfar aw yaghfir aw naghfir. Yughfar also, it could be in the passive tense. He was forgiven. So which way was it revealed? Which way was it preserved? Another example related to the diacritical marking differences is found in chapter 2 of the Quran. Warsh called it verse 139. Hafs called it verse 140. Differences in verse numbering. Notice how it reads. Yaqulun, they say. Taqulun, you say. Well, which way is it? Is it basically in the second person? Is it in a third person? And who is talking here? And notice the difference here. I want to point out something to you. The letter Qaf, we do not write it today with one dot. It is written like this, with 2 dots. So, was this a letter Fa or was it Qaf? And where is the noon? Where is the dot for the noon? As we can see it right here. You see, all of these things can make a big difference in how this particular word could have been revealed. Was it truly يقولون, or maybe was it something different? These are the questions we need to ask ourselves with. And lastly, I want to show you something related basically to the vowels and differences in vowels. In the very chapter of the Quran, first chapter, the Surah Al-Fatiha, the opener, basically, in chapter 1, verse 3, according to Warsh, he called it number 3. Hafs called it number 4. The difference is some of them included the Basmala, the opener basically, in the name of Allah. They included it as a verse. Others do not include it as a verse. That's sometimes where we get these differences. But there are other reasons also why we get differences in verse numbering. But here, basically, Warsh reads it, God, basically, refers to God, He is the King of the day of Maliki Yawmiddin, the day of basically of resurrection and judgment. He is the King of the day of judgment. Hafs read it, He's the owner of the day. If He's the owner, so who was the previous owner? Or did He give it now to somebody else? Or He's the king over it? I know it's semantic, but the question is, which way was it read? Was it read with this basically extending it by saying Malik, as if you have an alif here, and it makes the meaning now different, meaning the word becomes an owner, versus Malik, meaning a king. And notice how the difference in the vowels here. And finally, I want to show you another example. In chapter 2, verse 8, according to Warsh, verse 9, according to Hafs, we're talking also about a word or a verb in this case, and the verb is they seek to deceive, yukhadi'un, and another one, they deceive, yakhda'un. The main difference here is how the markings and the vowels in this case are used. Notice the sound here, yukhadi'un versus yakhda'un. I know the meaning might be the same. However, the question is, which way was it revealed? If the Quran was preserved, was protected, was revealed from heaven? These are the important questions that I am laying before you. And if you are a Muslim who is watching me right now, my question to you is, do you truly believe that the Quran is still preserved based on evidence like this that are available for you at your disposal these days? You can order these 2 readings, by the way, and many other documentation and encyclopedias that talk about the other readings. So I want you to ask yourself this. Is it really that the Quran truly has been preserved? Or do you think man took the time and have the authority and ability to manipulate certain words like this to suit whatever reason behind it? Maybe they heard it this way, maybe they intentionally did it. Nevertheless, this tells me that the Quran wasn't revealed in a consistent, monolithic way. This is my invitation to you, and I hope this episode has been helpful.